Hey, I'm Dave Bazuki, CEO and founder of ROBLOX, and today you're listening to Tech Talks. I'm here today with Kiran Bhatt and Nishchai Khanna, and we're talking everything AI at ROBLOX. We're going to go through a history of AI. We're going to talk about the systems that we've been running starting in safety over the last 4 years, and then we're going to be jumping to the future of AI, generative AI, creating 3D objects, based on just whatever you could imagine and where it's going at ROBLOX. Thanks for joining us. Welcome, Kiran. Welcome, Nishchai.
Thanks for having us, Dave.
Thank you.
Okay, so, I was doing a little mental calibration recently of sci-fi, and I used to read a lot of sci-fi when I was a kid. The Dick Tracy watch has come true. The interweb running around not using a credit card has come true. The holodeck, in a little bit of a way, ROBLOX starting to get there, right? 3D, faster than light travel, not so sure. We'll see if that ever happens. But then robots and AI, HAL Computer, 2001, movie was built in 1969. Like, we're getting pretty close, aren't we?
We are.
Like the red dot that you talk to?
That's right.
Okay.
All the natural language, speech understanding, taking that to an actual brain and then producing outputs that make sense.
Yeah, so we saw that movie. We saw chess with Deep Blue, the first time chess ever beat a human.
Correct.
Would you call that AI or early ML? How would you all think of that?
That would be even early search-driven systems.
We're not going to give that an AI.
Not quite there yet. Yeah.
Okay.
Very early. I mean, I think maybe you should call it the traditional AI, the classic AI approaches.
Okay. Then there was a time when IBM Watson beat some humans at Jeopardy. That seems like a fairly long time ago. AI or not AI?
Getting towards there.
Yeah.
Building on top of classical AI.
We would probably call that classical AI.
Classical AI. Okay.
Maybe the state of the art of classic AI.
Fast forward behind the scenes at ROBLOX. I don't know if many people know it, but even 3 or 4 years ago, probably 8 years ago, everything in trust and safety was predominantly human. We had to review every image, every sound, every moderation action. And I know we started talking about using this thing called BERT. ML or AI? What would you say?
I think that category is the early days of the modern AI, transformers based. So I think that's the big jump from the rule-based systems to neural network-based AI, and transformers came to prominence with BERT.
Okay, so behind the scenes, we're using that. You both work on a lot of deep technical platform, and then your company that came on board with ROBLOX to help track faces and transmit that in animation, Lumi, right?
Yeah, that's right.
AI or not AI?
I think I would call that ML.
Okay.
Yeah, it's computer vision, neural network based, CNNs, very small models that run on your device. So it's the previous generation of custom models that work really well on a given problem, and it's very fine-tuned for that problem, but nothing beyond that, right?
Okay. And so fast forward now, the world's changing so rapidly. One of the reasons we were talking earlier that this is such a special episode, everyone out there, we are living in the middle of the sci-fi book, right? Like 2 to 3 years ago, no one knew what ChatGPT was. Today, we're all debating whether to search for links or search for answers. Do you all feel we're living in the middle? Like, is this the most radical time of change ever?
100%. The world's changing every week sometimes, with a new model being dropped, a new technique being invented, or things running more efficiently. It's a great time to be alive.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is the pace of innovation and the energy that's put into AI has also seen a dramatic change since ChatGPT, and so you see big new drops from all different players, open source, big companies, which move the needle forward in how we understand the space, and the capabilities that come almost at a weekly, monthly cadence is inspiring.
Do you think that's also healthy in a way? Because you remember a year or two when we could all have a command line. We could have a Chat GPT command line, and everyone was blown away. When you talk about a drop now, what I interpret that is, let's go through it, right? Grok, Google, Gemini, DeepSeek, Microsoft, Mistral, ChatGPT, OpenAI. What I interpret these drops as is starting to show that many different companies can build this technology. And when you say it's a week apart, it feels to me like many, many companies are pushing at this at the same time. Is that a fair way to think of that?
That's an incredibly fair way to capture that idea. It's like a lot of people trying to work on the space and building on top of each other's ideas. The incredible thing about this wave has been the sharing of ideas, open sharing of ideas, open sharing of code, weights. So people can build on top of other intuitions that are the best intuitions that are out there. Because going back to one of your previous points about ML versus AI, the big difference now with these larger models is how general purpose they've become. Yeah. And with these general purpose models, you want a lot of people to be working on different facets of the problem and unlocking pieces of the puzzle, which helps the community at large.
And I think it's healthy competition. If there was one player, we would not see so much innovation. The fact that it's so many is pushing each other to improve on benchmarks, get to reasoning quicker, get to creation quicker.
There's maybe some notion that because a lot of this is in software and a lot of it is in computer science, what we got used to in maybe between 1915 and 1940 in the automotive industry, which happened arguably over 40 or 50 years, you think about the V8 engines, seat belts, better materials for tires, automatic ignition timing, carburetor, all of that stuff. We're kind of seeing a compression of that. And, rather than these innovations happening yearly, it sounds like literally seeing them weekly or bi-weekly.
Yeah. I think this is the artificial intelligence revolution.
A couple thoughts. One, just a random thing, because we're gonna be jumping to the future, but I don't want to forget about HAL in 2001. Do you think there's, sometimes people talk about AI having hallucinations, and I know those are getting less frequent as we build better models. Could you share, if either of you knows whether we think those are going away? It's a fun topic. And then did the people who wrote 2001 actually know about hallucinations? Because HAL arguably got stuck in a moral, ethical dilemma and had some hallucination problems of its own.
So I think hallucinations are going down. They're not done yet. We've gotten better at catching hallucinations, is what we're seeing. Yeah. So when we catch a hallucination, we can have a large model recreate what it did and sort of steer the conversation.
Yeah, and you can think of these modern models as a combination of two modes. One is the LLM itself, which still has some tendency for hallucination, because fundamentally it's a next token prediction system. So even though you align it well, it still has that potential problem. But then if you wrap it with another layer, like a reasoning agent, suddenly, you are able to pick up these problems much quicker and self-correct. And it's this self-correction nature of these systems that you're seeing with the reasoning engines that has truly been impressive.
When you say self-correction agent, is that the same as like my conscious as a little person sitting on my shoulder watching what I'm doing, kind of?
It's in the deep learning, in the AI parlance, it's like, you're looking at different, you're producing multiple tokens, and you have to pick what's the next set of tokens? And if you can think of having a system that generates the tokens and a system that can evaluate it, in some sense, if the evaluator is really good at saying, hey, that answer, not that great, don't go down that path, pick this other one. Yeah. So in a way, it's like your consciousness, but I think a little easier to put together.
I would say more like your parent.
Okay. So
Telling you,
disconnected. These systems have an air gap or something.
That's one implementation of it. One's a conscious and one's like someone telling you, like, hey, this is wrong, redo it.
Right, because if it's your own conscience, maybe your own conscience still needs like the parent on top of that, right? Okay, cool. So we mentioned ROBLOX safety, and over the years we developed so many models: image, text, voice, handling moderation, and that's sitting there working in the background. And then in the last year or two, in addition to all these background systems that are doing all this hard work, now we've been exposed to generative systems. And I think we were all first exposed to text generation. We've seen that start to move to image generation, seen it start to move to music generation, sound impersonation generation, now video generation. And then what we're going to be talking about is 3D generation, and then ultimately interactive 3D generation. Is each of those steps harder, as we go down that road, as we think about it? Because it seems like text generation is getting more mature, but we're not all using Google Photos or Apple Photos to generate videos right now. So I'm wondering if as we go up that, it gets more difficult.
It's less about difficulty. I would say it's more about the maturity of the space and the number of people working on it and the data sets that are available to be able to train these large generative models. And in the sequence that you painted, from text to image to audio to 3D, I think the amount of data that you have to train these systems progressively goes down. So to build a foundation model that can actually produce 3D is substantially harder, because now you can't just rely on 3D data alone. You have to somehow plug it into another model that is trained on a different medium modality, right? Yeah. So that therein lies part of the challenge. But I would also say that the maturity of text NLP as a field that has delivered a lot of analysis tools to the community is also very helpful, because the transformer architecture came out of analysis, for classification of text, and also for transforming from one language to the other, right? So it's that modality where you have to analyze a sentence for some summarization or a classification task, and once that became mature, suddenly people tried, hey, what if we just do generation with it? Yeah. And so that, to some extent, that field has existed for a while, and some of the newer fields like 3D are just starting to build. So
you mentioned training data. So behind the scenes, when we think of all of these popular models, and I think of all the data, I think of, okay, what is all the text out there? There's every book that's ever been written. There's every scientific journal that's ever been written. There's all the web pages in the world. These are a lot of places where there's text. Is literally a lot of this data being used to train now? Like, are people being able to gather all that data?
Yeah, some of it is licensed, some of it is sort of open. But there's literature that has been digitized specifically so that models can be trained. This is also when you're doing task-specific stuff to help a doctor and things like that. So a lot of this is human curated data that will help the LLM in a particular task that it's not doing well.
Got it. So that leads to, we're familiar with petabytes of text out there, video, maybe images, quite a few, videos, not as much, but then interactive 3D data that's used for games and experiences, go to a concert, play hide and seek. That's a much more scarce type of data, I assume.
That's right. Yeah. So, you can put a number to it. If you look at the open source data sets for images, even though it's much smaller than text, it's in the hundreds of millions of images that have captions with them. So those are the things that you need to during the pre-training of these data, of these models. And for geometry, for 3D, the biggest data set out there is in a few million assets. So it's substantially smaller in number compared to images or video or text. So that makes the problem very uniquely challenging.
So that's really fun because ROBLOX has a lot of 3D data.
Correct.
And 3D data is needed to train up these models. And so let's lead into a bit of what we're hoping to be shipping in literally this quarter or next quarter. And one that's pretty straightforward is text gen as a service. We'll come back to that. But I'd like to jump straight to 3D as a service. Let's talk about that. Like, what are we thinking of shipping soon?
Imagine if we gave the creators an API that they can open up to users so that users can say that I want to create this podcast room. I want to have Dave sitting here talking to Kiran and Nishchay. Rather than, and it makes every user a creator using that API. You can texture it a certain way. You can have Kiran and Nishchay and Dave wear the same sweater. You can have, the chairs and tables look the same.
That's right. I think what you're almost saying for me is if we can imagine it and it seems possible, it's not like faster than light travel. This is just better computer science. We should assume this is going to happen.
That is correct.
Someday.
Sort of realizing your imagination, your vision in 3D, both in terms of individual objects as well as the layout that captures the 3D-ness correctly is what we are working towards. And in terms of what we are shipping, it's pieces of the technology building up to the vision. So starting with the ability to generate a single object.
That's right.
And I think we have the object itself could be, right now you could start with props in the scene, and eventually this year we plan to release avatars, which are built with generative AI.
So now in the midst of it, we've all been working with the AI team over the last year, talking about this. And one ROBLOX values decision we've had to make is, do we get this perfect? And like we want to go all the way to photorealistic 3D generation, and we're just going to keep it in the lab until we ship it. Or is it better to get feedback as quickly as possible on quality, performance, how people use it, even if it's slightly rougher, as long as it's safe, as long as it's copyright compliant? Can you share a little of kind of the decision-making we've gone through around that?
Yeah, I can take a first crack at it. So yes, in the spirit of shipping a safe tool early and iterating on it, and getting feedback from the community, that's the ethos of the company at large, and I think that's what we hope to do in the AI group as well. And if you look at the AI community outside ROBLOX as well, that's the general style. People ship once it reaches a certain threshold and then continue to iterate on improving the quality. That definitely fits into our mindset as well.
Yeah. I think even from an infrastructure side, right, get to production faster, we need to learn how to run these AI systems at scale. And we can't wait for systems to be close to AGI before we know how to run them. And as systems get progressively more complex, so will our infrastructure code.
In a way, we're keeping things in sync, right? Because in addition to the algorithms and all the training, we're running an AI platform.
Yep.
We need to know how any creator on ROBLOX can call these APIs in their experience, how they can get 3D objects back, how we can moderate them. So one of the nice things is you're going to be exercising AI platform in sync with some of the computer science.
Absolutely, and it's crucial to start from the start because we're also shipping we're shipping bare bone APIs. Yeah. We're not giving hey creators do this with it. We also want to learn what creators will do, so we know on what modeling efforts to make them better.
So we've played with prototypes of this, and so when we take a step back, All of the creators on Roblox, they build 3D experiences. Those have APIs. We're going to launch an API. So if I'm walking around a 3D experience, I can type, we'll moderate it, build this 3D object, and that object's going to appear. It's absolutely amazing. I think when we did a demo a few weeks ago, I said, I want a pirate wheel of a spaceship, something or something.
Yeah.
And there it was. Like it looked pretty good to me.
Yeah, it's getting there.
Yeah.
Baby steps.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the big meta point here is that we want to open this general purpose object generation capability, and we want to open this to our creators in a way that will allow them to explore the user's creativity in populating these experiences, right? So it's now opens it allows the users of the platform experiences to generate things that they've never been able to do before, and and what they will do with it, as long as it's safe. We want the outputs to be compatible with the platform, but then we want it to be free.
Right. So this is the mesh generation API. There's a little bit of a notion of Roblox here in that we believe by having unlimited 3D generation in the cloud for every game creator, there may be new classes of experiences and games we don't even know about because no games have ever had unlimited 3D generation as part of them. We're used to right now because we don't have it, we maybe have to decide what we're going to wear or pick items off a clothing wrap rather than defining them. So this is going to be really big. Behind the scenes, I'm sure it hasn't been that easy. Have there been any technical challenges or like we're building 3D generation? I'm curious what kind of technical things we've had to solve or figure out.
The key innovation, the key unlock here is our way of digitizing 3D that makes it compatible with LLMs.
Okay.
And so what you see in the community in geometry generation is people, especially in the academic community, are taking a particular route of generating geometry with diffusion models today using global latents. Mm-hmm. And that's totally fine if what you're trying to build is individual objects. But at Roblox, we want the ability to go from a single object creation to multi-object creation to multimodal creation. So you may want to actually allow add scripts to these objects that you've created. So by nature, it's both multimodal and multitask, right? So you want the ability to produce both shapes and text together, and that capability means that you want to bring it into a framework that is compatible with LLMs, which is multimodal LLMs. That's so, in some sense, aligning the problem to the multimodal LLM architecture was the big unlock. And there was no clear way of tokenizing geometry to be compatible with LLMs. And one of the things that we're going to talk about is our VQ-VAE architecture that tokenizes geometry and produces results that are
So if I go to some Silicon Valley cocktail party and say, yeah, we're tokenizing geometry to make it compatible with an LLM, would that be kind of cool and hip?
Yeah, imagine an LLM, you can give it a scene and ask it how many chairs are there, right? Similar to what you do with images. That's what this unlocks.
Yeah. Which I saw that demo and it was amazing.
Demo, yes.
Okay, so that's a huge unlock. I can remember many months ago when we were actually talking about how we're going to tokenize, and then I remember we hit on this and started seeing acceleration. How about on the platform side? So I know we have over 200 models running on our platform. Have we been able to get leverage, like use that same platform we use for safety, for training, for 3D as well? Like build on top of that?
We have, but this was a bigger challenge for us because this is a multi-GPU training cycle.
Yeah.
We were training on 2 GPUs, 8 GPUs, 10 GPUs, but how do you train on hundreds of GPUs to train this model? So that was a big challenge. We had to sort of redo some of our networking protocols, work on GPU utilization, figure out how to load data more, efficiently, because, working with textual data and 3D data is very different.
Yeah.
A lot of work has gone into optimizing the inference of 3D, right? You don't want to sort of try and create a 3D object and wait for a minute while it appears. You want real-time editing capabilities. So how do you sort of use things like CUDA graphs and things like that to get your inference time within sort of sub 10 seconds, 5-second range? There's a lot of computer science that's going in there. It's a lot of fun too.
And optimizing inference is a very Roblox thing, right? On voice, for example, if we have millions of people all running through voice moderation, optimized inference means we can run efficiently
Correct.
all of those models. And so if we have millions of people generating 3D objects without optimized inference, like our system's probably going to blow a fuse or two.
Correct. And also the usability of the product will go down.
So faster response time.
Faster response times.
And this also goes back to the design decision of the architecture. By making it a next token prediction architecture,
That's right.
we are basically leveraging a lot of the innovations in the community that are being put towards text. So tokens, whether it's text or from shapes, it's going to be processed the same way. And so all the tricks, that the CUDA graph stuff and a lot of the other tricks that are in the community is directly usable for us as well.
Do either of you, we're going to jump from 3D gen to some other stuff, but do either of you have a particular use case you could imagine or you think about for 3D gen? So I'm imagining a medieval castle game where you define your own castle just by talking about it, for example, and 2 castles appear. Any favorites you?
I am thinking more on what sort of game mechanics this unlocks, right?
Okay.
Like, in the SimCity or sort of Second Life era, like how do I decorate my room? How is it easier to decorate my room? That power, that is the thing I'm thinking about. How do those games change?
Well, it might make it almost too easy to, right? Imagine I'm a 13-year-old living in the 1960s on the lower side of Michigan. Like, what's my room look like?
That's right. And it's this combination of both scene summarization understanding with scene generation. That's a unlock when for lots of game genres. And even for the experienced game developers, this gives you a mechanism to iterate very quickly. So you have an idea, you can prototype really, really quickly, and that is and then really focus on things, get the basic idea out, and then really focus on what would you add to get that extra oomph for your game.
Now we're starting with 3D mesh gen. If we go all the way to double black diamond, most difficult, start with 3D creation gen, which we're starting to think about. It's just with any prompt, generate a full 3D experience, a game, a concert stage, anything like that. Can you share a little of like, what's the difference between the single 3D part versus a full 3D interactive experience?
I think when you're thinking of a scene or sort of your medieval castle, etc.
That's right.
It is made up of, say tens or thousands of hundreds of objects.
Yeah.
All those objects have to share some characteristics with each other. The aesthetic needs to look right. The texture needs to look the same. The placement needs to happen. So the way that I think about it is that you have single object model that are creating objects.
Yeah.
There is texturing that makes sure that they look all sort of from the same era. There's a layout aspect to it so that the layout is coherent. There's a table and there are chairs around the table, and all of this is interactable.
That's right.
That's how I think about it.
If you look at actual game levels that people put together, there's a lot of cleverness in how they choose where to put detail versus, what objects. Like for example, this table, they may just model it with a block, a CSG block in ROBLOX, for example, and maybe the plants behind you, that's more meshes, or rocks have lots of meshes and things like that. So there is a lot of understanding of what primitive you use for a given object, and the ability for a system to automatically generate, hey, the table is made of parts, CSG parts, and the planter with trees are made out of meshes, and doing it seamlessly in a way that you can interact with it
Yes.
is makes it very efficient for the platform as well.
Now let's go up the level of complexity from the table to a automobile. Now, an automobile is more complicated than a table, right? An automobile has moving parts. It has wheels, axles, physics. And most automobiles that we work with when we're playing 3D interactive experiences, usually you're able to drive them. They have a heads-up display. They have an instrument panel. Like, what's the difference between a table and a car in video experience land?
I think a table has no life.
That's right.
And a car has life, and life comes with scripts.
Which is code.
Which is code.
3D object with code.
Correct.
And real cars have engine computers with code running. Game cars have computers running too.
Correct.
Yeah.
And LLMs do one thing well, which is write code. And our architecture sort of supports on sort of when you create a car, can you attach a script to it
That's right.
to move it fast?
Yeah, and it's not, it's generating the script as well, right? So, you're generating the parts, and some, with a prop like a table, there's no script, but a car could automatically, when this works, it's work in progress yet, but it can segment the object into the wheels and the different components, and then the generative system can also generate the code along with it because it's inherently multimodal.
So that will be magic. Rather than a static sculpture of a car, build me a sports car, blah, blah, blah type of engine, modern, I'd like it to be blue, super sci-fi, and make it drivable at 200 miles an hour. Get a fully functional car you can hop in and drive around.
Yeah,
And you can give it a pirate wheel.
Yeah, with a pirate wheel.
Yeah.
The one thing, if you look at what's happening in the community today, and you can actually get code that simulates just the code part of that experience, right?
That's right.
But it cannot generate geometry. So it doesn't produce any geometry. And so the unlock with our models is that it can generate both geometry and code it's all tokenized together with the same framework. And the LLM knows, okay, this set of tokens decode out to geometry. These set of tokens decode out to code. These set of tokens decode out to CSG parts. And it's just a text token prediction type of setup. So it's a sequence of tokens that represents the output that you care about. And the magic unlock when this all comes together is when you can sit in it and drive. Right?
That's right. So that was double black diamond. Let's go to triple black diamond, which is where I'm going to be gone for 15 minutes, but I'd like digital Dave to play with my friends for 15 minutes because I'm not going to be there. And this is also part of the sci-fi curriculum. That's also quite interesting, right? Because I've been playing Roblox a lot. I've texted a bunch. I've talked on Roblox. I have a certain way of moving around a room. And so that's all data maybe that someday could be used to build my digital twin in Roblox as well. So that's even a further stretch out. What's your thinking about that?
To me, that is another modality that we tokenize and put it into the system, right? So in a way, the framework is general purpose. You can for the behavioral pieces, it's one dimension, 1D data, right?
Yeah.
So we know how to tokenize that. So in some sense, it's basically making sure that the challenges there, of course, are that it has to be relevant. It has to capture the nuances of digital Dave. And so the reconstruction requirements for that might be very different from maybe a prop. And then the interaction is another challenge, right? Like the tokens that decode out should interact with the geometry that's in the scene. So I think in some sense, what you're painting is a vision where there is a parallel version of what's happening in the scene, the data model and the behavior captured with tokens, and then you have the ability to jump between the two.
So now I'm going to ask you both to make a really difficult prediction, right? So there's a lot of sci-fi around people using their digital twin to help do things efficiently. And I think Black Mirror had an episode where digital twins go on 1,000 dates to figure out if there's compatibility quickly. Do you ever think that'll happen?
No.
Oh, I like it.
No. not the dating aspect.
Okay.
That is too personal. But I do think that there is going to be a lot of sort of, the way that you think, the way that might interact.
Yep. What do you think, Kiran?
Yeah, I am not so sure if that's not going to happen. It's, if you look at the trajectory of the music that comes out of AI systems, the ability for systems to clone people's voice and mannerisms, and the ability for systems to clone people's videos, right? And you can produce video of people that really are visual effects quality today. It seems possible from a technical point of view.
My view on this is sometimes if we can imagine it happening technically as compute power increases, then we may be stuck where these things are going to happen, and then it turns it into, can it be done in a empathetic and elegant way rather than a dystopian way? And I think if we would have asked people 30 years ago, would you ever go online with some system to meet a future spouse? Everyone would say, no way, like that's impossible. Like they might have had the same reaction. So
I think mine is that I think technologically it'll happen. My hope is that the personal touch doesn't go away.
I think that's right. So a lot of things I think are going to happen. Faster than light travel, we haven't seen the physics yet, but anything, for me at least, we can imagine from computational power, I think there's a chance it's going to happen. So 3D gen, avatar gen, doppelgang, all of that gen. Let's pop into another area around the whole AI wave and the open source community. We now have two models we've publicly talked about sharing. One is, once again, in a compliant way, we've built some of the best voice safety models in the world, and we've open sourced that on Hugging Face.
That's right.
And we're going to be open sourcing a 3D foundational model so people can create 3D stuff as well. Can you just tell people, like, what's up with the open source community? Why is it important? Why are we doing it? We could start with our voice model and then move to our 3D model.
Want to take a stab?
Yeah. So for the voice model, we built it on top of an open source framework. We started with WaveLM, which is an open source framework, and we were inspired by open source all along. And when it came to looking at the results from our trained from scratch version with the WaveLM architecture versus what's out there in the academic community, our results were way better and much more relevant to what's actually happening in the real world of voice toxicity. So we decided to open source it so that we set the bar correctly for the next generation of systems working on this problem. So that this way people are tackling the right set of challenges and making communities safe. So there was a way for us to pay back to the community. And in the same spirit, we are going to open source the tokenization module that unlocks 3D generation for the community as well. So, we've chosen to go with a certain set of LLMs to bring 3D generation to our community. But I think, by unlocking the tokenization to the larger AI community, people have the freedom to put together systems on their own. Like, for example, Lava is an example where, multimodal capabilities came out from the open source very much quicker than many of the frontier labs, because some of the core modules were out there and people found out ways to combine them together.
I think a very cool outcome would be that one of the LLMs that we don't build has spatial reasoning that is built on top of the 3D tokenization that we release to people. That shows, And then, the other way that I look at open source is that I feel that this is, it's a way for us to bring the 3D community together. 3D is not a space that has actually seen a lot of people come together, unlike the tech space, etc. People are sharing architectures, or people are also sharing their data sets, etc. This is an opportunity for us to say, hey, listen, we are doing this. If you have your proprietary data and you want to create based on your proprietary data, you can fine tune this model and make it do its bidding. So that part is very exciting to me.
I'm curious if either of you has any feedback on, with our voice model, in a way, there was an element of elegant necessity there. We knew people wanted to use voice in Roblox. We had many ways of throttling it. We could go a certain age, certain ID verification. And so we created an ecosystem where we literally couldn't turn it on for more people until we had enough AI at enough efficiency to run all of the voice. Did either of you pick up on that? Like, I thought it was very motivational, right? We had a giant brainstorming group. They were stuck in a room because it was almost like we can't turn voice on all the way until we build a good enough AI model. I thought it was kind of elegant, right? It's sitting there. We can turn it on for more people, but we need like the brain power of the AI system to support this efficiently. Did it feel that way, or did it actually just feel like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do?
No, it definitely felt that way.
I think I was in that room stuck, so I could feel the, oh my God, how do we unlock this? This has to be solved correctly. And every other system that was doing voice moderation in the community was converting voice to text, and then doing text moderation, because that was a problem that we had solved and the community had solved. But our unlock was basically saying, hey, look, let's just directly use, do moderation classification on voice directly, and avoid that extra step. And the minute we took that decision, it essentially made a lot of paths clearer. It was a risk, but I think in some sense that's what made it successful.
The one anecdote I'll share from there is that every other project I've been a part of, the compute requirements kept going up as the project went forward. Unlike voice, where the compute requirements kept going down, which made the project just more tractable. It's a very Roblox way of doing things.
Yeah, because we might still have voice for 18 plus ID verified, like a very small set, without running that model in the background.
And it was also an example where releasing early, getting some data from the real world really made that loop very, very critical. So the lessons learned from that project, even though it was not generative, it was
so that even makes it for me more exciting that we're open sourcing the results of that for the community. We really did stumble on something really good because of necessity, in a way. So hey, behind the scenes, as part of this AI system, there's a bunch of other components that are interesting and hovering in the background. We talked about 3D mesh gen, but we didn't talk as much about a bunch of other components: text generation, text to speech, speech to text, language translation, safety. For me, those are exciting because when I imagine putting all of those pieces together, it feels like a toolbox for creators. And I want to see the first creator to talk to your favorite historical character safely, whoever it may be. Can you talk a little about those? And I'm assuming such a thing's going to be possible.
Yeah. So, coming back to your doppelganger Dave example, there are two options. I can give an API for people to create doppelgangers. We took a different approach where we'll give you very basic APIs.
That's right.
We'll give you a text generation API, a text to voice, voice to text. And you can stitch it all together to create your version of digital Dave.
That's right.
And it's very interesting, right? Like when we started working and thinking about giving text generation APIs, we asked ourselves, I'm like, hey, listen, how will we do a better job compared to everyone else out there? Why are we doing this? And the answer was twofold. No one's going to generate text that fits our safety policy.
That's right.
On the platform. And, because we control the user experience, we can just do it more efficiently. So that's how we sort of started building the text generation service. And similar to sort of, taking a lot of learnings from our voice safety system, can we do a text to speech and a speech to text system model, all built on top of open source that we can open up to creators.
It's very exciting.
In many ways, that toolbox that you mentioned is the key. Having access to all the different pieces that makes the final experience, some of which requires the extra Roblox sauce, and some of which can be more open source models out there. But I think having all of them available and being able to string them together allows us to see how people use these capabilities. And if we choose to double down on something, that's based on user feedback.
I mean, there's just a good hygiene there, right? Good game engines ultimately have separated DLLs. Good websites ultimately have microservices talking to each other.
Yeah.
It seems like a good virtual doppelganger should be built up of various components, each of which can be swapped in, replaced, tuned independently rather than a doppelganger monolith to the extent possible.
100%. We don't want to decide for people what and how they want to build it.
I mean, the challenge though is again, if the latency requirements are critical, right? So those are sort of infra challenges that we'll have to solve depending on the usage patterns. If people land up hitting, unreasonably slow, issues, then and those are the things that the engineering can focus on.
So where do we think this all goes in 5 to 10 years? Do we still think there's game developers? I'm personally an optimist. I think this is, for me, I've been saying this is no different than moving from oil painting to Photoshop. These are human acceleration tools. Do you think that's the case, or do you think game creation will disappear?
One of the main motivations for embarking on some of these AI-generated worlds and 3D is to allow non-experts to be able to start the journey of creation.
Yeah.
And it sort of lowers the bar for people to experience the magic of creation, and that is going to improve the funnel, like make the funnel much bigger. And so you're still going to have the really creative experiences that are going to stand out. But for people who are just interested in experiencing building 3D, this is an unlock, right? So in a way, you are bringing more creators into the platform by opening up these tools. So it's not that it reduces the creativity on the platform or the need for creativity, but it's just that more people are now on the platform doing interesting things.
Yeah, it's interesting to think if a long time ago we all used to do multiplication by hand, and then we all learned how to use scientific calculators. It's interesting to think if that we're going to see that same thing with AI, and more young people are going to learn prompt engineering and learn to use these tools very effectively, side by side traditional ways of creation.
Yeah, and I think one other thing that is really interesting is, imagine you have an AI system produce content for you, maybe meshes, in this case. You as a student learning how to do modeling, you might actually look at the outputs from these systems which mimic the experts. And so your learning curve is also going to be much faster because you're looking at the outputs that are looking legitimately expert created, and that makes you want to know, this is why the table needs to be made of CSG versus the plants need to be made of meshes. And so it also really helps kids and the people getting into the platform to learn the right ways of doing. It's not just about producing code or producing meshes. It's also the right way of setting it up so that it actually works together as a successful experience.
I also think about the example that you shared when the combustion engines, etc., were coming up. And I think, people who drove horse carriages learned how to drive cars.
That's right.
And I think the same thing is going to happen, how, AI is going to sort of turbocharge their workflows. And those workflows will change eventually. But to begin with, it'll just be an accelerate.
Okay, well, that's a very optimistic view of AI from the 3-person panel. We're all thinking human acceleration, not human replacement. And one big takeaway is the criticality of data and how data can accelerate AI training. So wonderful to have you both on today. It's been really exciting. I think our audience is going to learn a lot from this.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
Okay, Nishchak, Kiran, thanks a lot. Okay, hey, this has been another episode of Tech Talks with Dave Baszucki. Stay tuned for our next episode coming in a few weeks. Thanks. Welcome. I'm Dave Baszucki, CEO and founder of ROBLOX, and today you're listening to Tech Talks. Today we're talking about discovery. How do you find cool stuff on ROBLOX? How do you search for it? And we are joined by two discovery superstars. We have Michelle Gong on engineering, Chen Zhang on product. We're going to be talking about all things discovery. And really, we're hoping when you go away, you're going to learn a lot about what you watch on your living room, how you go shopping, and what it means when we talk about that. So welcome today. Let's get going. Let's just talk a little about your backgrounds. I scanned both of your LinkedIn pages, and you both have something in common. Do you know what it is? You both have PhDs, is that right?
That's right.
Okay, so let's just dive in, right? Chen, you're in product. Michelle, you're in engineering. Little background from you first,
Yeah.
Chen, and then we'll go to you, Michelle.
Sure. I would say like 20 years ago, I came to America actually to pursue a PhD in physics. So I kind of set the foot into the algo world, I would say. And that became a constant theme later on when I became a product manager. So I've been working on algo-related problem spaces for 2 decades. And largely actually related to discovery, as well as other problem spaces related to discovery, such as content production, as well as merchant fraud. So I actually was very lucky to apply the early days of machine learning to Google Shopping, Express, search and recommendation problems. And later on got to actually have the chance to build the first version of search, discovery, feed, and story ranking at Instagram. And when I talk about the merchant fraud problems, it was actually in a startup. And we had a lot of issues with all sorts of like merchant quality policy issues, and I had to deploy the kind of the first human in the loop machine learning driven process to fight it. And then eventually,
cool.
at Netflix, I had a chance to work on both content production and promotion.
Okay, so those are 3 companies we'll probably mention today. So Google, Instagram, and Netflix. And I think for everyone out there who's in STEM or learning, interesting that such a technical degree ends up being very appropriate for search and discovery, which is a very technical product category. Okay, and how about you, Michelle? Like, how'd you get your start?
So my PhD was on statistics and machine learning. I have worked in research labs until ROBLOX.
Yeah.
So before ROBLOX, I led applied research labs in Google DeepMind and
Yeah.
Meta AI, helping Facebook, Instagram, Google to improve their production recommendation systems
Yeah.
and content understanding models. I have joined ROBLOX 3.5 years ago. Time flies.
And it's fun working with you.
It's a lot of fun working here.
We roll up our sleeves on some pretty big technical problems, and they're both very researchy, but we literally ship your work every week. So it's both researchy and getting. So I thought Discovery was Captain Cook, right? Captain Cook was sailing around the Pacific Ocean with a fleet of ships looking for new stuff. He was looking for interesting new things, wasn't quite sure what was out there, found Hawaii, found a few other interesting things. So how does that relate to discovery in a consumer product? Who wants to talk about what does discovery mean when we look at Netflix or we look at Instagram or we look somewhere else?
Yeah, I love that analogy. I think discovery ultimately means how to help users find new types of content, the connections or services they're looking for. And then generally speaking, there are many different types of discovery.
Yeah.
There are the types of discovery is very search centric that usually for platforms like app stores or Amazon, because people have a specific app or product in mind, so they go look for it. There are also the type of discovery is very recommendation centric. You mentioned Netflix, right? As well as I would say Xbox.
So is that how people think about the industry? Discovery is the overall term, and then there's either search or recommendations?
Yeah.
Is that the right way to think about it?
Yeah, there are also
Okay.
other categories. Like, for example, I would say ads also adds to the fun.
So if I go to a shopping product, Walmart, Amazon, you name it,
Yeah.
I have both a search bar
Yep.
And sometimes when I go to the homepage on my Netflix, I just see a bunch of things. So those seem like the two different classes. If we think through all of the products that have a search bar, that search discovery, what types of things have recommendations? I know Netflix does. Are there any other products that pop to your minds?
I would say YouTube,
Okay, for sure.
Instagram,
Spotify, TikTok, a lot of social media platforms.
Xbox,
Yes,
probably.
Xbox too. Steam
Okay.
as well.
Okay, and then so those are discovery by images, or like I typically get tiles, and I think we're all really used to that. We don't know how used to it. A few years ago, there was a big innovation in discovery, and we started doing discovery not just by images, but by video.
Right.
Can you comment on what class of products those are, and are they doing discovery as well?
Yeah.
Who wants to go?
In fact, I would say TikTok, Instagram Reels, a lot of these short video products actually changed how, especially new generation, interact with the internet. It is a very challenging problem because how could you capture users' interest within the first few minutes when they
That's
get onto
right.
the platform? And then how do you understand which video is most relevant? Yeah, it's definitely a different paradigm
That
for
is
discovery.
still discovery.
That's right.
It's interesting to think with those products, is it fair to say the product is discovery in that it's the whole time I'm using the product, in a way I'm doing discovery.
Yeah, well, in some way, like the traditional discovery, right? You saw some kind of a cover of the product.
And then you go somewhere
And
else.
then you go there and check if the product is what you want or if that content is what you want. But short video changed that, right? What you see is what you get. So there's no such evaluation process. In fact, you are in consuming and then deciding, oh, I want it or don't want it, and then go to the next step.
And so two little hints on that type of discovery. First, the idea that instead of being separate, an image and then consumption, we have seen a lot of the video things I watch in my living room move to auto showing a little clip, for example.
right.
There's a little bit of it. I think that without giving away, that hints a lot of the opportunities we have at ROBLOX to move from just image to what could be next. So that's a fun topic. And then one thing I think, I'm not sure, and you both might know the answer, a lot of people, and before we dive into the details of discovery, how do those short form video products? So I know there's TikTok Shorts, Reels, Spotlight, and there's a bunch of others. How do they know to show me videos of cats fighting with ducks? Like, how did they figure that out? Any idea? Like,
Yeah, some parts of it is actually coming from the user behavior, and they basically give you a set of sampled videos and see how you work.
what kind? But I
and
didn't know I'm doing any behavior. What? I feel like I'm just scrolling through things. Is there some behavior I'm doing that's giving them a hint as to what I like?
Like how much you actually watch that video in
Okay.
front of you, and then whether you immediately skip or you actually watch the whole thing. And did you actually give it likes, or did you actually follow the creator?
So is it possible that only the speed at which I scroll, how long I stay on any video, and whether I like has been enough to infer what I like on those products?
In fact, I want to be a little bit nerdy here.
Yeah.
That's implicit user feedback. We also have explicit user feedback. When you first come on, for example, our platform, we know very little about you, right?
Yeah.
Interactive recommendation is the key. We want to know the recommendation within the first few minutes. And how do we get transfer learning from other similar user cohort? How do we immediately get the signal from your behavior and train the model and get the real-time signal to tailor the recommendation towards you?
So would that mean that if I tend to watch all of the cat videos most of the way through and all of the duck videos all of the way through, there's other users like me who also like ducks fighting with cat videos, and I'll start to see their videos.
That's right. And then sometimes they will also inject some of the new signals to see if you like those new video. And if you like it, they will show you more. And they're also part of the signal actually coming from the video itself. So a lot of those short video platforms actually invest in content understanding. They try to understand the creator intent, the metadata of the short video. Using that, they will pair with what they know about you as a user. For example, if you tell them when you're onboarding, you like this type of topics like cats, then they want to show you those later on. So basically the final put together recommendation system usually have both the user behavior information, implicit and explicit signals, as Michelle said, as well as the content understanding signal. So it's like a creation related content to put together the recommendations for you.
Okay, so that's a good foundation in discovery. It's not Captain Cook. It's giving people the best content or content they're interested in. So we jump over to ROBLOX now. And ROBLOX is a little different than video. It's a little different than shopping. These are experiences that people can come to together. So it'd be fun to talk about how discovery's evolved a bit on ROBLOX. And I can start if you want, because we didn't even know what discovery was when we started ROBLOX. We just knew when UGC started getting more popular, how do I find something interesting? So we ran for many, many years, single discovery algorithm. Our algorithm was show all of the experiences with the real-time stack ranking of the number of people in the experience. It's that simple. And that got ROBLOX going for probably the first 8 years or so. It had a couple interesting traits. When something was really crazy, it went straight to the top. It also had a lot of issues. It would tend to burn in something at the top.
Right.
So it gave a huge advantage to experiences that had been around for a while. So it'd be fun to maybe just talk a little about how discoveries evolved at ROBLOX, maybe what you saw when both of you came on board and some of the things we've done since there. So who wants to jump in on that?
When I joined, I think we had our first personalization model. It was a collaborative filtering model with only one input signal, user experience engagement pair.
Okay.
And then we recommending top 2K experiences. But it's already a step forward than non-personalized model, right? And then since then,
So a personalized model means rather than recommending the same thing to every single person on ROBLOX, no matter where you live, how long you've been on the platform, what device we used to recommend the same thing to everyone. So this was a big step, personalization.
That's right. And then after I joined, in the next 2-3 years, we replaced the collaborative filtering model with a multi-step stage ranking model. So that basically means we want to retrieve as many experiences from all the 90 million experiences on the platform as possible, and we rank them and personalize to that user's intent. And then we have deep learning, graph learning. In the more recent years, we implemented self-supervised learning, efficient attention modeling, entire space multitask ranking. So the whole ranking stack, essentially. And then I think now we are recommending 30K to 40K unique experiences daily.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a lot. That's in 3 minutes. Massive improvement on ROBLOX. So let's tease a few of these apart. So going all the way back to the start, we used to rank real time, just all the experiences. We started thinking about personalizing this. And then one of the first steps, you mentioned engagement, is when you start connecting people with experiences, you have to know where you're going. Sometimes we call this, I'm always asking, what are we optimizing for?
Right.
Basically, or what's our objective function? If I was to go to a cocktail party and someone was to say, hey, what's your discovery recommendation optimizing for?
Right.
I said, we've figured out a way to optimize for 5-year user happiness and retention. And so we're able to connect people with experiences that they love, and it makes them just want to hang out and be with their friends on ROBLOX. Would that be a good answer?
Yeah, I think that is the first base layer, right? Because if you don't have the user engagement and retention, everything else doesn't follow. So we need that actually to be solid in the center, but we're not finishing with our job right there. Right. So we also building a second layer, which is called page construction, which you trade off among different objectives, including also sort of a long-term value of the user, which includes monetization, includes social connection, includes other sort of utilities of the platform. And then we're adding the last layer, which is really optimizing for the experience join funnel, because Roblox experience is way more complicated than a piece of just
That's
a
right.
tweet. So through that, I think we actually can optimize for a multi-layered objective system to be still very adaptive to our fast-pacing growth flywheel.
So this is really tricky, I think, all of the machinery you've shared, because if we asked someone to build an engineering system that optimizes 5-year long-term happiness and retention, that's really hard.
Yes.
And I'm wondering, Michelle, if you can mention, sometimes we use the term proxies.
Yes.
And we talk about, we can't, we need to know what's going to be good for long-term retention in the first hour or the first day. And so a lot of what we're working on is trying to find proxies for long-term retention. Can you talk a bit about that?
Yes. I think there are two factors. To have a flourishing platform to retain users, one, we optimize for user. We also optimize for content creator. We want to improve ecosystem diversity on our platform so our user can find more and more new engaging content. On the other hand, for each user, we want to make sure they find the most relevant content, so that we found the most relevant content is a good proxy for users' long-term satisfaction.
right.
So what does relevant means, right? We need a proxy for relevance. Therefore, we use engagement. Like if you are deeply engaged with an experience, that means the experience is relevant. If you're willing to make a purchase, that means is actually relevant to you. And also, if you are inviting your friends into the experience to play with you, that's also relevant. We keep looking for such proxy metrics to essentially approximate short-term relevance to then approximate long-term user satisfaction.
That's cool. You mentioned something that's very subtle. It's probably the most technical thing we'll go into today, which is ecosystem health, not just of users, but of creators. Now, this is really difficult because short-term user optimizations are very different than long-term thinking about search and discovery that makes the ecosystem healthy for creators to flourish and thrive. And so there's a lot of decisions you both make where we could boost results in a month, but that might not boost results in 6 months. And because the results we see in 6 months are not just related to search and discovery, they're related to the health and happiness and business of all the creators on the platform. So that's really subtle. Thinking about optimizing both user health and creator health. Can either of you just comment, like,
Yes.
how do we figure that out? Like, that's really complicated.
Yeah, it is a journey, right? As part of the discovery evolution, I think we realize more and more discovery is not isolated island. You cannot just do this through improving a certain piece of algo, twisting certain objective function, and achieve the amazing result.
That's right.
We have to do it along with our creators. That's the
right.
key. And then what do I mean by that? There's a few segments of it. Part of this is like actually consciously consider ecosystem health in the design of our system. That's why I mentioned the separation layers design we just have. And then part of this is also about having the right sort of measurement of success so that we know we're heading towards the right direction. But then the part of this is also about transparency, like all the stuff we just talked about, like the how we optimize, what we optimize.
So I'm going to tease this one apart. So we're saying two things here. Number one, there may be parts of our algorithm we tune
Yes.
that would show a short-term user decrease, but we're going to bet that over 6 months,
That's
it's
right.
going to boost creator health, and we're going to be in a better place in 6 months. So there's a little bit of a take the long view value there, which is super interesting. There's another thing you touched on. This is a big thing you just mentioned that word transparency.
Yeah.
Because up and down our culture, there's a lot of discussions around algorithms. This is politically in the hot seat. There's some history to non-transparent algorithms, and we're going to touch on a few of them because I think this is actually really interesting to the user base. So let's go further. What we're saying is we're starting to tell the creators on Roblox what our algorithm is, what are the factors that are being weighted towards personalized what we show people. And can you mention the connection all the way to our dashboard? Like,
yes.
What does that mean?
Yeah, it means like, for example, if we use a particular metric in our objective function, let's say the co-play that Michelle mentioned, the action that user invite their friends to join experience, we want to make sure that shows up in the creator's dashboard so that creator can see the metric of that particular thing for the experience, and up and down with the time series so that they can understand, oh, what is my action causing this metric go up and down, so that how can I optimize my action?
So this is pretty interesting, right? Because a lot of companies have discussions around how transparent can we be with our algorithm. One of the typical things for not being transparent would be people are going to game the system. If we shared our algorithm, people would game the system. But I think we discussed, I don't know,
Yes.
I'm actually pretty optimistic because wouldn't gaming the system, if we have a really good algorithm that's transparent, mean the same as building an amazing creation on Roblox?
Exactly. In fact, in addition to transparency, we also want to provide insights, actionable insights, to help creator to improve their experiences. Therefore, transparency is only the first step. After transparency, we say, hey, here are the tools, and here are the insights. Why don't you go back and improve your experiences?
Yeah,
That's right.
For example, I'd like to mention one of the recent very successful creator tools we built is thumbnail personalization. And then typically in other companies, they build it as a platform feature. It's not something creator use. Like the platform control how many versions of this promotional assets, and they pick one of the many for a particular user. But we build it with the mindset that we need to partner with the creator. This is their baby, their experience. They have a voice to decide what kind of variants of the promotional copy they want to put on top of the platform. And through that partnership, right, and then the creator really loved this actually tool. They adopted really fast. They also kept giving us suggestions, help us make the feature better. And then meanwhile, they have this dashboard to see how the action actually will fit into the system, and how does that help them do the better job next time.
It's interesting that in the past, before we were talking about full transparency on our discovery and recommendations algorithms, we would think about telling developers how to be successful on Roblox. But is it possible that through full transparency of search and discovery and sharing an analytics dashboard, we're sharing exactly what we believe.
That's
and
right.
Like we believe, we're trying to do our best to show the best personalized recommendations. So it almost comes full circle in look at the dashboards, look at our transparency on discovery. That's what we believe is really special.
Yeah, exactly. And then part of this intentional transparency is also giving our creators agency, as well as letting them tell us where we're actually still missing. I actually firmly believe our ecosystem is so vast. As a small team, we sometimes may not necessarily know what all the different types of content might be out there, what creators are thinking about to build, right? It's hard for us to anticipate.
That's
but
right.
if we tell them what we are looking at, they can tell us, wait, hold on, have you considered this as an aspect of the experience that could be very engaging, very telling of the retention? And then we want that kind of feedback. But without being transparent, you wouldn't be able to hear that.
And I think what's also interesting is as we start searching for the best 6 or 8 or 10 factors to predict 5-year retention.
Yes.
A lot of them are human understandable. And from memory, I think it's, do people come back the next day? Is this an experience where people are meeting with their friends?
Right.
Is this an experience where, it's fun that these end up being almost intuitive in a way.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, super cool. Okay, a couple other things that, so for people who are out hanging and talking about search and discovery, there's a term that sometimes shows up in all platforms called cold start. So for me, cold start was living in Minnesota, going outside when it's 20 degrees below, and like my car wouldn't start because the oil was so cold. It was like, roar, roar, roar. It's interesting how that's metaphorically come to search and discovery. What's cold start mean when someone hits Netflix or Roblox or Instagram? What's that mean on our platform?
Yeah. So actually, there are two types of cold start.
Oh.
Yeah. So one type of cold start is user cold start, like
Yep.
what you just said. When a new user showed up in front of a new product, like Netflix or us, what do? And at that moment, we do know nothing about this user.
right.
The best luck is we can ask the user to fill some question there. Maybe we can have a little bit of clue, right? And then that's traditionally very hard for recommendation system to recommend very relevant content to you because we know nothing about you. The other type of cold start is content cold start. It's about a new piece of content showed up on our platform. Again, except for the creation related data, we have very little user engagement data with that piece of content. And then this content may have a hard time competing with, especially the boring, right, very
That's right.
successful old content. So for both type of cold start problem, we also have.
Yep.
And we've been in kind of the process of addressing them. And I don't think it's an ending sort of a journey. In the past, we have actually a dedicated cold start model to solve the user cold start problem. Over the past, I think, a year or two, we added a lot of streaming features,
Yes.
which actually means we index really heavily on new users' real-time activity.
Yep.
Because, we know so little about you, so we want to be very adaptive to the new user.
Yeah, from an engineering point of view, content cold start is actually a less challenging problem than user cold start because our content understanding model have improved significantly in the past few years. And also, with such a big platform like ROBLOX, we can quickly explore and collect some user feedback, and immediately we know whether the content can go viral or not. So in fact, we discovered a lot of popular content that was only published like 2 days ago.
So this is really, this is interesting, and this is something that a lot of creators are always asking about is if I make something new
Right.
and it's played 100 times, do I have a chance to go viral? And I think what you're saying is yes.
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 Like
Yes.
we're focusing on this.
Yeah.
Now, in the midst of this, because we've worked so hard to balance the long-term ecosystem health with bubbling up new content, and there's a bunch of names for this, right? There's like multi-armed bandit, and there's like all these names for this. We have to be careful because we're now talking about content without a long history of play.
Yes.
And there's many ways to make content without a long history of play look good. I can have an emptied base plate with an amazing description and an icon. It says Dave's Super 50,000 person medieval night battle, and I can have a huge this is the best new thing. But that might not be very good. So there's some things we have to do to try to optimize that. Can you talk about content understanding?
Yes, I think this is definitely, there's always trade-off. We want to discover a content as quickly as possible, but meanwhile, they have to be high quality.
Yeah.
In this year, we plan to invest significantly into content understanding and content quality because we start to recommend more and more tail content and discover them faster.
Yep.
So we have set up work stream on all this clickbait detection and then the low quality content.
And I think what
detection.
we mean by clickbait is rather than someone doing their best to make a cool Roblox experience, something where the image, the description, what we can see in the place, it just doesn't all add up. It seems like a little different.
Yeah.
Yes.
There is a fine line. The challenge here is there's a fine line between copy and inspiration.
That's right.
Right, because we want inspiration. A lot of a good creation, whether it's art or architecture building, come from inspiration. So someone saw something successful on Roblox and inspired by it, come up with a similar idea and make it even better. It's good. It should be encouraged. But if you directly copy it, then that's something bad. We want to not do it.
The way I've thought about this is we only have so much room to mix all of the top experiences, the
Right.
up and coming experiences with the new experiences. We want to do that in the most optimal way possible. So if, for example, half of all the new experiences coming out of nowhere are mislabeled or misiconed, they're actually taking the space of the valid effort. So I've always thought about this as making it more efficient for the people who are
Exactly.
really trying to create.
Yeah,
new
not
stuff.
taking the good oxygen from the good experience. That is totally true. And I think we are, as Michelle said, still early days in fighting against this problem because the copycats, the scammy games, the misleading content, teleports, we are discovering them, detecting them, filtering them. But the problem is it's a little bit like a whack-a-mole. If you don't know what it is, you don't know how to detect it based on the current traditional approach, because you have to like understand it, label it, and then learn a machine learning algorithm and then deploy it. But in the future, we are looking for even more scalable way that without even understanding the pattern, can we actually spot it before it become a big thing? And that is a hard problem.
Yeah.
And this is rooted in actually deeper understanding of our own content, which is not just about its metadata, its title, its promotion assets, but also what's actually really going on within the game, within the experience.
What's really given me comfort about this is we're not necessarily, something that I don't think we really could do would be understanding content to know what's going to be great. Like
Right.
that seems impossible. Our users need to do it.
Yeah.
I think the way I think about it, when we say content understanding, it's understanding really where it just doesn't add up.
Yes.
Like something's really weird here and we
Yes.
don't want to steal the oxygen. So that's another fun complement to the cold start problem, where we're trying to cold start content as well as have users have a great first experience. So to frame this in everyone's mind, we've been talking about discovery, which is you look at something and you see a lot of cool things that are intriguing to you, but there's a whole other way that people interact with shopping, interact with their home video theater, interact with games, and that's search. And search is completely different than discovery. When I think about searching, whether it's on a shopping site or somewhere else, I typically, when I'm shopping, I sometimes don't know what I'm looking for. I just say, hey, I want to look at, ultra portable cameras with a good lens. Whereas when I'm on home video, a lot of times I enter the name of the movie, for example.
Right.
So maybe to start, is search really both of these things, knowing exactly what I want or roughly what I want?
Yeah, it's essentially, you can imagine for organic discovery, user doesn't have to input a query, right? We understand the user intent from the past user behavior or similar user. For search discovery, actually, we get some golden queries from users.
What's a golden query?
So essentially, the user queries is actually contains a lot more information. I shouldn't say golden because in technical terms, golden means there's a set of standard queries. We have correct answers for them.
Yeah.
But users with queries actually give us an extra bit of information. In fact, our team has been collaborating with our PhD interns to see whether we can have the multi-turn recommendation system. So
Can you give an example of what would be thought of as like one of these types of queries?
So I come on to Roblox as, hey, I like Dress to Impress. Can you suggest me something similar?
Ooh.
So that's the first turn. And then they suggest something to me. And I like these two, but not the other two. And then that's the second turn. Through multi-turn conversation, we actually can gather a lot more explicit information from users. And therefore, we can tailor our search and recommendation experiences.
I never even thought of that. So I've never thought of when I'm shopping, for example, or on Roblox, of having a more complex dialogue. Show me something like this, but not like this, and more like this.
Yeah.
So is that a general thing we should expect in all these products, like a much more complex search line?
So I think this is a speak to
Early
the
prototyping days.
Yeah, I think it speaks to the evolution of search because we just talked about evolution of discovery earlier, maybe more from the recommendation perspective. From search, I would say up to today, a lot of our work is really about making search better as a companion. Like what you said, you have a particular intent in mind, whether it's a particular experience or types of experience, right? And we're trying to find it for you. But what Michelle is talking about is actually the next stage. We are aspiring to go towards that. I'm not sure if a multi-turn query is the only solution, but we definitely want to go there.
It's worth thinking about it, right?
Yeah, it's like a concierge.
Because we're used to link search, and whether we're using Bing or Google or some other thing, and now all of society is going through complementing that with an AI supercharged
Yes.
type search. And when I think of shopping, just this morning, I was literally looking for a mini stereo auxiliary cable, 6 feet long, white, and I could feel that, I won't name the shopping site, it was having trouble putting that all together. And it was doing more of a context match rather than saying, okay, they have to be 6 feet long, they have to be white, they have to be a mini aux cable, let's only show those.
Right. There's a logic in your intent.
And so that logic was not being picked up.
Right,
And so I think what you're saying is search may start to go down that route.
Yeah.
I think as users are being trained by all these AI products, right, to be actually feeling natural, to have a dialogue with a box, I think this behavior became potential sort of mature, and that's where potentially we want to explore too. And then, but as a baby step, just also as a PM, I like try to put things also in a practical terms. In the baby step, we're building a search landing page as a way to sort of starting the concierge journey. So user can come to the search box, maybe have intent, but immediately get value without even typing a single term, because they can find their recently played experiences, trending search queries, or their own queries, or maybe some sort of categorical experiences related to their sort of history. And over time, you can imagine that search landing page can become the place where they start this kind of multi-turn journey as well.
That's super interesting.
Yeah.
I just learned something. The future of search actually is going to combine a lot more human understanding.
Yes.
So much potential for shopping sites, I think, as well as Roblox.
Another feature of search we also start doing is no longer just one single entity, one search product. We used to have several search, right? I mean, we still do. We're using Roblox platform.
Right, because on Roblox, I can search for my friends, I can search for experiences, I can search for a piece of clothing, I can search for even an event.
Yes, but in the user's eyes, like we're one company, one app. So we start putting things actually together. So we have this whole vision of Omni Search. Recently, we have already putting people search together with experience search. Next step is also bringing marketplace items to the same Omni Search as well. So users just go to one place and they can find all the things on Roblox.
And the results are really good. And I know we're automatically understanding a little, is that more likely a username or is that more likely an experience?
That's right.
For example, and mixing the results.
Yeah.
And that's been very promising. I think it implies a much cleaner UI, right? Search is search wherever it is on Roblox. Really excited about that as well. So a couple other things. So now let's get a little controversial. Okay? Because all companies are trying, but I want to highlight what I felt happened in 2016 and has been since corrected, and they're doing an awesome job. And I know I'm maybe even one or both of you worked at a company there, but in 2016, which was 8 years ago, I can remember going on Facebook. And I can remember the election was going on at that point in time. And I felt more than being attracted by pictures of my friends' cats, which I felt was more of a retention mechanism from seeing interesting stuff.
Right.
It was getting into the thing of starting to share news clips by friends. And I could see all of my friends from high school and college posting clips in very different types of clips. And it almost felt like the retention was switching to being either really like this or really don't like this. It was a little bit more of almost a moral outrage or a moral connection switch. And then I know that over the years, Facebook ultimately said, yeah, let's move a little bit more to user health or happiness. So it seems like this is a little bit of one thing to be aware of when designing a search or discovery system. And it does feel that might be related to short-term versus long-term optimization. Is that how you would interpret it? Maybe a short-term optimization versus long-term optimization?
Actually, I was there when this happened. I was actually at Instagram.
Okay.
Experienced a slightly part of that sort of phenomenon. I think back then, whether Facebook or Instagram feed, optimization objective is really engagement.
Yeah.
And then actually short-term engagement, just time spent.
That's right.
And then because of that, you drove into several issues. One is a popularity bias. Now we're very familiar with that, or you call it like a bullying effect.
And
right?
we want to highlight this was very early in the search and discovery things, and Meta's subsequently become extremely good at it.
Right.
So this is more like just an industry discussion on short-term optimization versus long-term optimization.
Historical sort of episode we went through. And then so the other part of this is pushing actually some of the new creators harder to climb up. So there's a declining of the sharing. And then the third issue was a filter bubble. That's what you're talking about, right? You potentially got pushed into those extreme sort of bubbles, only see certain type of thing or the other certain type of thing. And the fourth thing is you start seeing people's connection with their actually very close friends actually falling off. So this shows a good example when discovery is a single-minded, optimizing for one objective, how dangerous that can be.
Well, it also shows, in a sense, one of our values is we are responsible.
Right.
The massive amount of responsibility that both of you are dealing with all the time. And I feel the transparency is a good check. It's a little like open source discovery kind of thing. So that's good. And the notion that the better our discovery is, the less gameable it will be. Like it'd be cool to imagine someday we can just share our whole algorithm, and because it's optimizing what we believe is healthy is really cool. I want to ask a question around now another controversial question. Are you at all on either Shorts, Reels, TikTok, or Spotlight, or any of those? Because I'm on all of them.
I am.
I'm on
you sure?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm on all of them, and each one of them has, for some reason, zeroed in a certain part of me. Like I was mentioned, one of them is a little bit more for me interesting, cats fighting with ducks kind of thing. One of them, for some reason, is just all kinds of therapists telling me how to get better. So that's kind of interesting. One of them is all around cars and rockets and motorcycles and rebuilding engines and things like that. And then one of them is all about political stuff, just like real-time political. So I'm wondering if what that means is, even though it's fairly well known, is it possible that each of these companies has a little bit of their own discovery algorithm? Is like such a thing possible?
Yes. I think all of them are actually powered by some of the most advanced discovery algorithms in the world. However, as you can tell as a user, those most advanced discovery algorithms are not good enough for you.